When you walk into a room, any room, you experience something beyond just walls and furniture. You feel an energy, a presence, an invisible architecture that either pulls you in or pushes you away. But here's where most people never realize. The spaces you're drawn to, the rooms that make you exhale and feel like you can finally breathe, they're not random preferences. They're mirrors reflecting the deepest parts of your psyche, showing you exactly who you are beneath the surface, and more importantly, who you're becoming. Your living space isn't just where you exist. It's where your unconscious mind speaks its clearest language, where your soul arranges physical reality to match internal truth. The room that calls to you, that feels like home before you've spent even 5 minutes inside it, contains coded messages about your deepest needs, your hidden fears, your unspoken desires, and the version of yourself that's trying to emerge. Before we begin, I need you to do something essential. Don't think about interior design trends, Pinterest boards, what your friends would choose, or what looks impressive in photographs. Instead, look at the 4 room styles I'm about to show you and notice which one creates a physical sensation in your body, which one makes you want to stay, which one whispers that if you lived inside it, something fundamental would shift. Your body knows before your mind can explain why. Trust that knowing. And if you're ready to explore the hidden psychological patterns that shape every choice you make, hit that subscribe button now. This channel dives deep into the unconscious territories that determine your entire life. And what's coming next will transform how you see yourself. Each room represents a distinct psychological architecture, a different way your inner world organizes meaning, safety, growth, and identity. Some speak of minimalism and control. Others embrace abundance and sensory richness. Some create sanctuary from chaos. Others generate creative friction. The space that pulls you isn't an aesthetic preference. Something inside you recognized itself before logic could interfere. Your unconscious chose before consciousness could question why. Now, I'm about to reveal something that will fundamentally change how you understand your relationship with your environment. But first, let's explore what it means if the first room captured your attention.
If the minimalist room drew you in, that space with clean white walls, almost no furniture, every object intentional and necessary, empty surfaces reflecting light, air moving freely through uncluttered space, then your psyche is desperately seeking clarity, simplicity, and relief from overwhelm right now. This room belongs to people who experience the world as too much noise, too much information, too many demands, too many choices competing for attention every single moment. Your nervous system registers stimulation more intensely than most people's. What others barely notice, background sounds, visual clutter, competing textures, crowded spaces, these things drain your energy, fragment your attention, leave you exhausted without understanding why. The minimalist space isn't about deprivation or aesthetics. It's about creating the external conditions that allow your internal world to finally settle, to find its natural rhythm, to stop defending against constant sensory assault. When you enter a room like this, something inside you exhales. The mental chatter quiets. The tension in your shoulders releases. You can finally think clearly because there's nothing competing for your attention. You possess what psychologists call high sensitivity, an enhanced capacity to process subtle details, emotional undercurrents, environmental shifts that most people never consciously register. This isn't weakness or oversensitivity. It's a different neurological configuration, one that offers tremendous advantages when properly supported, but becomes overwhelming when your environment doesn't match your needs. People often misunderstand your preference for emptiness. They think you're cold, detached, afraid of warmth or personality, but they're wrong. You're not removing things because you don't value them. You're removing them because each object carries weight, demands attention, pulls at your awareness. You're choosing what stays with exquisite care, keeping only what genuinely serves your well-being, releasing everything else, no matter how beautiful, expensive, or sentimentally significant. Your relationship with space mirrors your relationship with life itself. You don't want more, you want better. You don't want bigger, you want deeper. You don't want to accumulate, you want to distill everything down to its essential truth, to find the core that matters and let everything else fall away. The empty surfaces in this room reflect your mental ideal. You want your mind to work this way, clear, uncluttered, able to focus completely on one thing without fragmentation. You're fighting against a world that rewards multitasking, constant connectivity, perpetual productivity. Your soul wants the opposite. It wants singular focus, deep presence, the luxury of thinking one thought all the way through without interruption. Sometimes you feel guilty about needing less when everyone else seems to want more. You wonder if something's wrong with you, if you're missing some capacity for enjoyment that others naturally possess. But there's nothing wrong. You're simply wired differently, and your environment needs to honor that wiring instead of fighting against it. Now, there's something profound about this preference that connects to a deep psychological pattern, something that explains why you felt so exhausted lately. But before I share that, make sure you're subscribed, because we're going much deeper in the content ahead, and you won't want to miss what's coming. The minimalist room appears in your life when your system is overloaded, when you've absorbed too much, when your psyche needs to purge excess and return to simplicity. Right now, you're not just organizing physical space, you're reorganizing your entire life, removing toxic relationships, simplifying complicated commitments, eliminating activities that drain more than they nourish, creating boundaries where none existed before. You're learning that saying no to everything non-essential is the only way to say yes to what genuinely matters. You're discovering that your energy is finite, precious, worthy of fierce protection. You're understanding that less isn't sacrifice, less is freedom. The message of this room is both simple and revolutionary. You don't need to adapt yourself to spaces that overwhelm you. You need to create spaces that support your actual nervous system, your actual needs, your actual way of being. Stop apologizing for requiring simplicity. Start honoring it as the foundation of your well-being.
If the Bohemian room captured your imagination, that space overflowing with texture, pattern,
color, plants spilling from every surface, mismatched furniture that somehow works together, vintage treasures mixed with handmade objects, walls covered in art and textiles and memories. Then your soul carries an expansive, creative energy that refuses containment or categorization. This room is never chosen by someone who thinks in straight lines or lives within neat boundaries. It belongs to people who experience reality as endlessly fascinating, who see connections others miss, who find beauty in unexpected combinations, who understand that rules about what matches or coordinates are just limitations imposed by people afraid of creative risk. Your inner world is abundant, overflowing, constantly generating new ideas, connections, possibilities. Walking into your mind would feel like walking into this room, rich, layered, full of stories, impossible to take in all at once. Every object has meaning, history, emotional resonance. Nothing is arbitrary. Everything belongs because it spoke to some part of you that needed expression. People drawn to bohemian spaces possess high openness to experience, that personality trait characterized by intellectual curiosity, aesthetic appreciation, emotional depth, and comfort with ambiguity. You don't need everything explained, categorized, made safe and predictable. You're comfortable with mystery, complexity, questions that have multiple valid answers. Your creativity doesn't express itself through one medium or discipline. It saturates everything you do, everything you touch, every decision you make. The way you dress, the way you speak, the way you combine unexpected elements into something entirely new. This is your natural language, the way your soul communicates when words fall short. The layered quality of this space mirrors your psychological depth. You're not simple or easy to understand. You contain multitudes, contradictions, unexpected combinations. Traditional personality categories feel too narrow, too limiting. You're artistic and analytical, introverted and expressive, serious and playful all at once. And you've stopped apologizing for refusing to fit into boxes that were never designed for someone like you. The abundance of plants speaks to your need for living, growing things around you. You don't want sterile perfection. You want organic messiness, natural wildness, evidence of life continuing its eternal process of becoming. The plants remind you that growth is never linear, that beauty emerges from chaos, that alive things don't follow predetermined patterns. This room also reveals your relationship with time. Every object represents a different moment, a different version of yourself, a different discovery. Your space is a living autobiography, telling the story of who you've been and who you're becoming. You can't just erase the past and start fresh. You carry it with you, integrate it, allow it to inform your present without determining it completely. And there's something crucial about this choice that explains why you've been feeling pulled in so many directions lately. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share will make everything clear. But first, if this exploration is resonating, hit that like button. It tells the algorithm to share this with others who need to hear these truths. Sometimes people tell you your space is too much, too chaotic, too overwhelming. They don't understand that what looks like clutter to them is actually a carefully curated ecosystem to you. Every element serves a purpose, inspiring creativity, sparking joy, triggering memories, providing visual stimulation your brain actively craves. You can't work in empty spaces. You need richness, texture, visual interest. Your creativity feeds on abundance, draws energy from variety, finds connections between seemingly unrelated elements. The minimalist room would make you feel creatively starved, cut off from the sensory input your imagination requires to function. But like all strengths, this one has shadow aspects. Sometimes you accumulate instead of curating. Sometimes you hold on to things past their usefulness because releasing them feels like losing part of yourself. Sometimes the abundance that usually energizes you starts to overwhelm even you, and you can't find what you need in the layers you've created. If this room called to you first, you're in a phase of creative expansion right now. Your imagination is particularly alive, generating ideas faster than you can execute them, seeing possibilities everywhere you look. You're ready to express yourself more boldly, to stop hiding your creative nature, to let your freak flag fly without apologizing to anyone. The message of this space is clear and powerful. Your abundance isn't excess. Your complexity isn't chaos. Your refusal to simplify isn't confusion. You're creating an external environment that matches your internal richness. And that's not just okay, it's necessary for your creative survival.
If the industrial loft grabbed your attention, that space with exposed brick, visible pipes, concrete floors, steel beams, raw materials celebrating their fundamental nature, height and openness creating breathing room, functional beauty without unnecessary decoration, then you're living a powerful combination of authenticity, independence, and uncompromising integrity right now. This room represents truth without polish, function without pretense, beauty found in honest materials rather than decorative disguise. It speaks to people who've grown tired of performance, exhausted by pretending, done with presenting carefully curated versions of themselves that bear little resemblance to internal reality. You value authenticity above almost everything else. You can smell inauthenticity from a mile away, detect performance where others see genuine interaction, recognize when someone's words don't match their energy. This heightened sensitivity to truth and falsehood makes you excellent at reading situations, assessing character, knowing who to trust. But it also makes you intolerant of social games, small talk, relationships based on obligation rather than genuine connection. The exposed materials in the industrial space mirror your psychological stance. You don't want to hide the infrastructure, pretend things are other than they are, cover up the honest reality of how things work. You show your metaphorical brick and pipes, your strengths and limitations, your successes and failures, your polished aspects and rough edges. All of it visible, all of it real, all of it integrated into one coherent presentation. People who choose this aesthetic often possess high independence, that quality of self-sufficiency, internal locus of control, comfort with solitude, and resistance to external pressure to conform. You don't need constant validation, approval, or reassurance from others. You have your own internal compass, your own standards, your own definition of success that may differ completely from conventional markers. The height and openness of the loft space reflect your need for freedom, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. You can't tolerate feeling trapped, limited, controlled, or managed. You need room to move, breathe, think, become whatever you're becoming without artificial constraints imposed by others' expectations or fears. The functional aesthetic speaks to your pragmatism. You're not interested in decoration for decoration's sake. complexity that serves no purpose, rules that exist simply because they've always existed. You question everything, demand that things earn their place through utility or genuine meaning. Eliminate whatever doesn't serve a clear function. Now, there's something important about this choice that reveals exactly where you are in your personal development, but I'm going to share that in just a moment. If you're finding value in this deep dive, subscribe now. We explore these psychological territories regularly, revealing the hidden patterns that shape your entire existence. Your relationship with this space also reflects your relationship with vulnerability. The raw, unfinished aesthetic might seem to contradict emotional openness, but it's actually the opposite. You've learned that real strength comes from showing up as you actually are, not from maintaining perfectly polished facades that require constant energy to sustain. You respect people who do the same, who admit mistakes, acknowledge limitations, share failures alongside successes, present themselves as whole human beings rather than highlight reels. You build your inner circle carefully, choosing depth over breadth, quality over quantity, real connection over extensive networks of superficial relationships. But this independence has costs. Sometimes you push away help you actually need because accepting it feels like weakness. Sometimes you carry burdens alone that could be shared. Sometimes your high standards for authenticity make it hard to find people who meet them, leaving you isolated when you'd actually benefit from community. The industrial loft also reveals your relationship with your own history, the exposed brick, the visible age of materials, the celebration of what came before. These elements show you don't try to erase your past or pretend you emerged fully formed. You integrate your history, learn from it, allow it to show in ways that add character rather than diminish value. If this space spoke to you first, you're in a phase of claiming your authentic self more completely. You're done performing, done pretending, done contorting yourself into shapes that feel foreign just to make others comfortable. You're ready to show up as you actually are and let the right people find you while the wrong ones naturally fall away. The message of this room is direct and uncompromising. Your authenticity isn't rudeness. Your independence isn't coldness. Your high standards aren't judgment. You're creating a life built on truth rather than performance, and that's the foundation of genuine power.
If the greenhouse-style room captured your soul, that space where boundaries between inside and outside blur, floor-to-ceiling windows flooding everything with natural light, plants not as decoration, but as primary inhabitants, natural materials like wood and stone, sounds of water or wind chimes, the feeling of being held by nature even while sheltered from weather, then you're experiencing a profound need to reconnect with organic rhythms, natural cycles, and life force that exists independent of human construction. This space is chosen by people who feel the modern world has become too artificial, too disconnected, too removed from the natural processes that sustained human life for millennia before we locked ourselves in climate-controlled boxes and forgot we're animals who evolved in relationship with earth, sky, water, and growing things. Something inside you is calling you back to circadian rhythms instead of artificial schedules, back to seasonal awareness instead of perpetual sameness, back to growing things with your hands instead of only consuming things produced by others, back to the deep peace that comes from being in relationship with living systems larger and older than human drama. Your nervous system craves natural input, actual sunlight, not screen glow, real plants producing oxygen, not synthetic air fresheners. The irregular patterns of nature, not the perfect geometry of manufactured environments. Bird singing, not notification sounds. The smell of earth, not chemical cleaners. Your body knows something your mind might have forgotten. You're not separate from nature. You're an expression of it. People drawn to this space often have what environmental psychologists call high biophilia, that innate human tendency to seek connections with nature and other forms of life. For you, this isn't just a preference, it's a necessity. Your mental health, physical well-being, and spiritual vitality directly correlate with how much contact you have with natural environments and living things. The blurred boundaries between inside and outside mirror your psychological stance. You don't experience yourself as separate from the world around you. You feel interconnected, part of larger systems, affected by and affecting everything in your environment. This isn't mysticism or wishful thinking. It's accurate perception of ecological reality that most people have lost touch with. The abundance of plants in this space speaks to your need to nurture, to participate in growth, to witness life's persistent drive toward thriving. You don't just want to observe nature, you want to collaborate with it, support it, create conditions where living things flourish. The health of your plants directly reflects the health of your own psyche. When they thrive, you thrive. When they struggle, you feel it. The natural light flooding this space represents your need for transparency, clarity, and illumination, both literal and metaphorical. You can't function in darkness, secrecy, or spaces where things are hidden. You need everything visible, honest, exposed to light. This makes you excellent at seeing truth, but sometimes uncomfortable with necessary shadow. Before we continue, I want to share something that will help you integrate this quality without losing your groundedness. But first, if this content is opening new understanding, turn on that notification bell so you never miss an exploration. What's coming in future videos will deepen everything we're discovering here. Your relationship with this space also reveals your values around sustainability, simplicity, and living in harmony with ecological limits. You're increasingly uncomfortable with consumer culture, with accumulation for its own sake, with lifestyles that require destroying the natural world to maintain. You're looking for different ways to live, ways that align your daily choices with your deeper values. The sounds in this space, water features, wind chimes, bird songs, reflect your need for natural rhythms and organic soundscapes. You find mechanical sounds jarring, artificial music exhausting, constant human noise depleting. You need nature's soundtrack to regulate your nervous system and return to your own natural rhythm. But this deep connection to nature can create challenges in modern life. You feel physical discomfort in completely artificial environments, office buildings with no windows, shopping malls with recycled air, cities where green space is minimal. You need regular contact with actual nature, not just potted plants, to maintain your equilibrium. Sometimes people tell you you're being unrealistic, impractical, too romantic about nature while ignoring its harshness. But you know something they've forgotten. Humans aren't meant to live completely insulated from natural processes. The convenience comes with a cost. Disconnection, depression, chronic stress, immune dysfunction, spiritual emptiness that no amount of consumer goods can fill. If this room called to you, you're in a phase of remembering. Remembering you're an animal, not a machine. Remembering you're part of ecosystems, not separate from them. Remembering your well-being depends on relationship with living things, not just human connections or material success. The message of this space is both ancient and urgent. Your need for nature is not frivolous.
Your craving for living things is not weakness. Your discomfort in artificial environments is not maladjustment. You're hearing a call that's been sounding since humans first existed, and following it isn't escape. It's return to what you've always been.
Each of these 4 rooms is far more than an interior design preference. They're psychological portraits, revealing how your unconscious mind is organizing meaning right now, what your soul needs to function optimally, what aspects of yourself are ready to be honored, expressed, and fully lived. Some are drawn to minimalism because their systems are overloaded and desperately need relief from overwhelm. Some choose bohemian abundance because their creative nature requires rich sensory input and layered complexity. Some are pulled to industrial authenticity because they're done performing and ready to show up as they actually are. And some follow the nature-integrated space because something ancient inside them is calling them back to organic connection. Your choice wasn't random. Your unconscious mind speaks through attraction, through gut feelings, through physical sensations that bypass rational analysis completely. It works faster than thought, deeper than words, more honestly than conscious preference. It recognizes what's growing inside you and simply shows you so you can see it clearly. And here's what most people completely miss about these spatial preferences. They're not fixed. You're not locked into one room forever. You're complex, evolving, constantly changing. Today you might need minimalist clarity. Next year, bohemian abundance. Later, industrial authenticity. Eventually, nature connection. You're a living process, and your environment should support whatever phase you're moving through. Sometimes the room reveals something you've been ignoring. Your need for simplicity, your hunger for creative expression, your readiness for authentic living, your craving for natural connection. Other times, it confirms something you already know, but haven't dared to fully claim, honor, or organize your life around. And remember this essential truth. You're not choosing rooms to impress others, follow trends, or maintain property values. You're creating the external conditions that allow your internal world to function, flourish, and fully express itself. This is sacred work. This is self-knowledge made physical. This is your soul speaking through space. Now here's what I want you to do next. The power of this exploration isn't to categorize you or limit your complexity. It's to help you hear yourself more clearly, to validate instincts you might have been dismissing, to give you permission to create environments that actually serve your well-being instead of fighting against your nature. Your spatial preference is a message from your unconscious, a gentle but persistent invitation to understand what part of you is awakening, what aspect needs support, what quality wants full expression. Listen to it, trust it, honor it even in small ways. You don't need to completely redesign your living space tomorrow, but you can take one step toward greater alignment. Remove 3 things if you need simplicity. Add texture if you need richness. Expose something real if you need authenticity. Bring in plants if you need nature. That's enough. Transformation begins with small movements toward truth. Before you go, I need you to do something important. Comment below which room chose you.
Not for me, but for yourself and others who need to see they're not alone in their needs, their preferences, their way of being in the world. There's tremendous power in claiming your truth publicly, even in small ways like this. If this journey into the hidden dimensions of your psyche resonated, subscribe immediately. We're exploring these territories regularly, diving into the unconscious patterns shaping your entire existence, revealing truths waiting to be discovered. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Share this with someone who's struggling to understand why their environment feels wrong, why they can't settle, why nothing feels like home. Sometimes the answer isn't about finding the right space. It's about understanding your actual psychological needs and creating environments that honor them. Your room has spoken. Now it's time to listen.